Remember these brands? Once the hottest names in fashion, now barely a blip on the radar. I'm talking about the labels that defined entire eras, the ones you absolutely begged your parents for, the logos that were plastered all over our yearbooks and MySpace pages. Walking through the mall was like stepping into a catalog, with each store offering a very specific slice of cool. It was a time of bold statements, of velour tracksuits and trucker hats, of denim so distressed it looked like it had been in a fight with a tiger. We all thought these brands would be here forever, that they were the absolute pinnacle of style. But fashion, my loves, is a fickle, fickle thing. What's hot one minute is, well, not the next. These brands were more than just clothes. They were a uniform for our youth, a way to signal who we were, or at least who we wanted to be. Seeing those logos now is like hearing a song from a school dance. It instantly transports you back. You can almost smell the overpowering cologne wafting out of the storefronts, can't you? It's a bittersweet nostalgia, a reminder of trends we lived and breathed. So today, we're taking a little trip down memory lane. We're going to revisit these fashion giants, these titans of the textile world, and explore what made them soar to such incredible heights, and what, ultimately, brought them back down to earth. We'll unpack the cultural moments, the celebrity endorsements, and yes, the scandals that wrote their stories. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's dive into the fabulous, fascinating, and sometimes tragic tales of the clothing brands that simply faded away. Let's start with a brand that was absolutely impossible to ignore. Ed Hardy. Oh, you remember. In the mid-2000s, you couldn't swing a flip phone without hitting someone covered in one of Don Ed Hardy's iconic tattoo-inspired designs. It was a visual explosion of tigers, skulls, and roses, all saturated in the most vibrant colors imaginable, and often sprinkled with a healthy dose of rhinestones for good measure. French designer Christian Audigier licensed the name and turned it into a global phenomenon. It was worn by everyone from Madonna and Britney Spears to the entire cast of Jersey Shore. It wasn't just clothing, it was a statement. A very, very loud statement. The problem, my darlings, is that when something becomes that ubiquitous, it's destined for a fall. The brand's explosive popularity was also its undoing. It became so overexposed, so deeply associated with a very specific reality TV culture that it lost its edge. The market was flooded with counterfeits, and the original sense of cool began to feel, dare I say, a bit tacky. It went from being a symbol of rebellious luxury to a punchline almost overnight. The very thing that made it famous, its loud, in-your-face aesthetic, was what ultimately made people turn away. A classic case of too much, too fast. Before Ed Hardy's reign, there was another brand that had an absolute chokehold on celebrity culture. Von Dutch. And it all came down to one single item, the trucker hat. Honestly, has any accessory ever had such a meteoric rise? In the early 2000s, you weren't anybody unless you were photographed wearing a Von Dutch trucker hat. Ashton Kutcher, Justin Timberlake, Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie. They made this humble piece of headwear the ultimate status symbol. It was the uniform of the paparazzi stroll look. It was casual, it was effortless, but it screamed, "I'm famous." But like the trucker hat trend itself, the brand's fame was fleeting. Its downfall was a messy combination of oversaturation and some rather dramatic behind-the-scenes drama. Stories began to surface about the brand's namesake, Kenny Howard, also known as Von Dutch, and his controversial beliefs, which certainly didn't help its public image. The brand also suffered from intense infighting among its owners. Once the A-listers moved on to the next big thing, the public followed suit. The hats that once sold for a premium were suddenly relegated to discount bins. A relic of a very specific, trucker hat-obsessed moment in time. Picture this. You're walking through the mall and you're hit by two things simultaneously. First, the thumping bass of a dance track, and second, a cloud of cologne so potent it could knock you over. You, my friend, have arrived at Abercrombie & Fitch. For years, A&F wasn't just a store, it was a destination. It was the undisputed king of the mall, selling a very specific fantasy of all-American, preppy cool. The dimly lit stores, the perfectly folded polos, and of course the shirtless models at the entrance, It was an experience. They didn't just sell clothes, they sold an aspirational lifestyle, and we all bought into it. But the very exclusivity that made Abercrombie so desirable eventually became its biggest liability. The brand faced a mountain of controversy, from discriminatory hiring practices to its CEO's infamous comments about only wanting cool, good-looking people to wear their clothes. The brand's aesthetic, which once felt aspirational, began to feel exclusionary and out of touch. As a new generation of shoppers emerged, one that valued inclusivity, diversity, and authenticity, Abercrombie's narrow definition of cool no longer resonated. The brand that once defined teen culture suddenly found itself on the outside looking in. Oh, juicy couture. Those two words, they just instantly bring to mind a plush velour tracksuit, probably in baby pink or powder blue, with the word juicy sparkling across the back in that glittery gothic font. Back in the early 2000s, this was like the absolute peak of casual luxury. It was totally the off-duty uniform for Hollywood's elite, from Jennifer Lopez to Jessica Simpson. It basically said, "I'm comfortable, but darling, I'm also very, very rich." The tracksuit became an icon, a symbol of Y2K glamour that was both super chill and, honestly, kind of over the top. We all wanted one, right? It was the ultimate way to feel like a star, even just running errands. But here's the thing. Juicy Couture ended up being kind of a one-trick pony. Or, well, a one-tracksuit pony. Sure, they sold other stuff, but the brand was so tied to that velour set that it just couldn't really move past it. As trends shifted to minimalism and more low-key looks, all that bedazzled, brightly colored loungewear started to feel a little outdated. The exact thing that made Juicy a phenomenon also trapped it in a very specific time capsule. And when the novelty faded, the brand lost its IT factor, and the velour empire sort of crumbled, leaving behind a legacy of comfort, glamour, and, yeah, a whole lot of sparkle. Now let's talk about a brand that wasn't just about clothes. It was about a whole movement. FUBU, which stands for Us, By Us, was a total powerhouse in the 90s. It was this groundbreaking streetwear brand started by 4 friends from Queens, New York, who wanted to make clothes for their community, by their community. And honestly, they pulled it off on a level that was just wild. With those bold logos and baggy silhouettes, FUBU became totally synonymous with hip-hop culture. It was super authentic, straight from the streets. And stars like LL Cool J really put it on the map. Like, he even wore a FUBU hat in a Gap commercial, which gave them millions of dollars in free advertising. FUBU's success was massive, but as the 90s turned into the 2000s, fashion started to shift. The baggy, oversized look began to slim down, and new streetwear brands popped up, making the scene even more crowded. FUBU also decided to license its brand out to different manufacturers, which, unfortunately, meant losing creative control and kind of watering down what made it special. It started showing up in discount stores, which hurt its premium, aspirational vibe. Even though it faded from the mainstream, its legacy is still huge. FUBU paved the way for so many Black-owned brands and proved that, for us, by us, was a statement that could be both powerful and profitable. If FUBU was the king of 90s streetwear, then honestly, Baby Phat was its absolute queen. Launched by the amazing Kimora Lee Simmons, who was married to Def Jam co-founder Russell Simmons back then, Baby Phat was pure Y2K glamour. It took that feminine, sexy vibe of the era and mixed it with real streetwear attitude. We're talking low-rise jeans, cropped baby tees, faux fur, and that iconic curvy cat logo, usually blinged out in rhinestones, of course. It was feminine, it was fierce, and it was literally everywhere. Baby Phat gave a whole generation of women the confidence to rock a look that was both street and chic. Kimora Lee Simmons wasn't just the founder, she was the living, breathing heart of the brand. Her over-the-top lifestyle and fierce self-confidence were totally woven into Baby Phat's DNA. But after Kimora and Russell Simmons split up, and the brand got sold to a big corporation, it lost its visionary leader. Without Kimora steering the ship, Baby Phat had a hard time keeping its identity and staying relevant. Fashion trends moved away from that bold Y2K look, and Baby Phat just couldn't keep up. They've tried to make comebacks, but honestly, it's never quite been the same as it was in its heyday. when that little rhinestone cat totally ruled the scene. There was a time in the mid to late 2000s when denim wasn't just denim. It was a luxury item, and True Religion was its high priest. The brand was famous for its distinctive super thick contrast stitching and its signature horseshoe logo on the back pockets. These weren't your average jeans. They were a statement piece that could cost like hundreds of dollars. Wearing True Religion jeans was a way to signal that you were in the know, that you had disposable income, and that you cared about the details. Every celebrity, from Jessica Simpson to Megan Fox, had a pair, making them the must-have denim of the moment. The problem for True Religion was that its signature look was so specific and so bold that, honestly, it became a victim of its own success. The chunky stitching and embellished pockets that once screamed luxury started to feel dated as fashion pivoted towards a cleaner, more minimalist denim aesthetic. The rise of fast fashion also presented a huge challenge, offering trendy styles at a fraction of the price. The brand struggled to innovate beyond its signature style and found itself saddled with debt. While it still exists, it no longer holds the revered status it once did in the denim world. A reminder that even the most devout followers can lose their religion. Alongside Abercrombie & Fitch and American Eagle, Aeropostale totally formed the holy trinity of teen mall retail for years. If Abercrombie was like the cool, older sibling, Aero was definitely the friendly, accessible, and much more affordable cousin. Its brand was all about bright colors, comfy basics, and honestly, having its name plastered in big, bold letters across the chest of almost every single t-shirt and hoodie. It was a safe bet for back-to-school shopping. The kind of place you could go with your friends and leave with a bag full of graphic tees and hoodies without breaking the bank. Seriously, it was a reliable staple of the teenage wardrobe. But you know, Aeropostale's greatest strength, its affordability, and focus on logo-heavy basics, eventually became its weakness. As fast fashion retailers like H&M and Forever 21 gained popularity, they offered a wider variety of trend-driven styles at similarly low prices, making Aero's stuff feel repetitive and, kinda uninspired. Teens got tired of being walking billboards for a brand, preferring more subtle or unique clothing. The company struggled to keep up with changing tastes and fell into serious financial trouble, filing for bankruptcy in 2016. Though it was saved and still operates, it's honestly a shadow of the mall giant it once was. American Apparel was like totally different. It built an empire on basics. Plain t-shirts, hoodies, and leggings all made in America, which was actually a huge selling point. But you know, its aesthetic was anything but basic. It was known for its edgy, provocative, and often controversial advertising, which featured amateur models in suggestive poses, blurring the line between fashion and art house photography. The brand, founded by the eccentric Dov Charney, really cultivated a very specific cool kid vibe. It was the uniform for hipsters in the 2000s and early 2010s. The clothes were simple, but the brand's image was like anything but. Ultimately, the controversy that the brand courted so aggressively became its downfall. A storm of scandals, including a bunch of lawsuits against founder Dov Charney for misconduct and harassment, totally wrecked the brand's reputation. The ethically made marketing message clashed, like super hard with the toxic corporate culture being exposed in the headlines. People started to turn away, and the company found itself in financial ruin, filing for bankruptcy not once but twice. It was a pretty spectacular implosion, honestly proving that no matter how cool your disco pants are, a brand's image and its ethics are totally linked. Before we even had going out tops, we had BB. For a generation of women in the late 90s and 2000s, BB was like the go-to spot for a killer Saturday night outfit. The brand specialized in clothing that was unapologetically sexy and super glamorous. Think tight-fitting dresses, rhinestone-encrusted tops, and, honestly, anything with a bit of animal print or metallic sheen. The BB logo, often spelled out in glittering crystals on the back of a top or the strap of a dress, was a total badge of honor. It meant you were confident, you were fun, and you were totally ready to hit the town. It was like the definition of clubwear chic. But just like a lot of brands on this list, Baby struggled to evolve with the times. As fashion moved toward more casual, athleisure-inspired looks, the demand for overtly sexy, high-glamour clubwear started to fade. The brand's super-specific aesthetic just felt less relevant in a world where a more understated style was becoming, the new cool. Faced with declining sales and the rise of online and fast fashion competitors, Baby announced in 2017 that it would be closing all of its physical stores, shifting to an online-only model. So, while you might not see its storefronts in the mall anymore, its legacy totally lives on in the memories of countless fabulous nights out. And there you have it, a walk through the graveyard of fashion's fallen giants. It's fascinating, isn't it? How these brands could be at the absolute center of the universe one moment and then just fade. It's a powerful lesson in the cyclical nature of style. What made them special? The bold logos, the specific silhouettes, the exclusive attitudes, often became the very anchor that weighed them down when the cultural tides turned. They were so perfectly of their time that they just couldn't quite make the leap into the next one. But hey, their stories aren't just about failure. They're a vibrant, sparkling, and sometimes cringy snapshot of who we used to be. These clothes were the backdrop to our first dates, our school dances, and our weekend hangouts at the mall. They totally tell a story about our aspirations and our identities at a time when we were still figuring it all out. Seeing a Von Dutch hat or a juicy tracksuit is like finding an old photograph. It brings back a flood of memories, both good and bad, and reminds us of a simpler, or at least a different time. Fashion is always moving forward, but it also loves to look back. We're even seeing some of these Y2K trends making a comeback, which is, honestly, a wild thought. So, who knows? Maybe we haven't seen the last of these names after all. But for now, they remain beloved ghosts of our fashion past. Did you rock any of these brands? Let us know which one you missed the most.